We are in chapter 48. Of course, a continuation of chapter 47 and 46. Yesterday we spoke about my personal going out of Egypt. My exodus, my going out of my restraints, limitations. The word Egypt in Hebrew, Mitzrayim, comes from a word Meitzar, which means constraints, restrictions. Which is interesting, the Nile River, goes down Egypt and irrigates the land. And the Straits of the Nile. Well, the Straits of the Nile put you into denial, ultimately, because of the restriction that it creates for you in your life. A restriction. And the restriction is that the human condition is what dictates for you. And going out of our own Egypt, that we have to go out every day, is to recognize that we don't have the limitations. And what are our limitations are based on our five senses that are inherently from the animal soul and body that give us a limitation. So I perceive the world with my eyes, my ears, my nose, and taste, palate, of course, and touch. And I define my world by that. I limit my world as a result. I don't allow my soul to emerge. I don't allow my soul to emerge. But when we do connect to our soul and allow it to escape, to emerge from the imprisonment, its exile that is covered by the body, and then I connect to doing a mitzvah, as a result, I'm free. I'm free. What does free mean? I'm free of those restraints and constrictions of the human condition, and I am actually godly. That I'm revealing the godly nature that I have. That's very powerful. That's what we learned yesterday. So the Alter Rebbe is going to go further into this idea in chapter 47. It's a short class today. I've made it lengthy already. But that's something I'm good at, So, contemplating the greatness of the Ein Sof, the limitlessness of God, the infinite of God. So, any thinking person understands, well, Kishmoi Kain Hu, as his name, so he is. Meaning, there's no end or limit. There's nothing finite to the light of God, to the vitality of God that comes from his simple will. Right? We have a limit to our will. You might have a strong-willed person, but still limitation to it. Right? Inherent to the human condition. So this light of God, the vitality of God that diffuses from his simple will, is united with his very essence in a perfect unity as oneness. So, what's the problem with that then? Problem. Well, what is that? What's the outcome of that is that if the world would be created, and you and I, part of this world, that we'd be created based on that, right, then, well, there'd be no world as we know it today. It wouldn't be a finite world as an independent being, me, or a sense of independence of anything in this world. There wouldn't be even the spiritual realm of like Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, where righteous, holy souls are there. Or angels. Because the Garden of Eden, the spiritual world, and even and angels are limited creations. Not only that, the mind to understand and to apprehend is limited of this infinite light. So what would we enjoy if you can't appreciate something? Enjoyment comes from an appreciation, which comes from the mind. Well, we're talking about an infinite light of God that is beyond us. We'd be incapable of deriving any benefit, any pleasure, any delight of an infinite order, because we'd be nullified out of being, because it would be just that of the infinite. Unless, there's one thing. And what's that? Tzimtzum, contraction. A contraction on the infinite nature and quality of God. If there's a contraction, therefore, and believe it or not, that's the end of the class. So that, what does that mean? It means that even creatures of the highest spiritual forms, being that they're finite beings, in order for them to exist, God has to invoke tzimtzum, contraction, in order that there be finite beings. Now, what's the point? Is over here, and this is the takeaway, because it's a very short class that is only at like a stepping stone to the complete idea, which is going to unravel itself, or will evolve in forthcoming classes, is that what God is doing something that's completely dissimilar to Him. And this is the point that I would like to discuss today. And this is where we're going to go with this, but I'm going to bring this just on a personal level for the moment. To be able to do something that is completely dissimilar to you. Now, dissimilar to you if you know, doing a bad thing because you're a good person. No, we're not talking about that. But doing something that is just not in your world. Right? You're a highly educated intellectual. And for you to play with a little child, gaga googa, it's sort of like, come on. Well, this is the idea over here. To contract upon yourself. And contracting upon yourself then brings out something that is completely dissimilar to you. Now, where do we get this idea from? Is what we just learned. God is infinite, Ein Sof. And even the Ein Sof vitality and light that diffuses from Him to ultimately to create is one with the essence of God. And through contraction, tzimtzum, what is He doing? Making something finite. Well, what is more dissimilar between the infinite than finite? There's nothing more dissimilar than that. Right? So the point being, or the takeaway over here for the moment, because we're in the middle of the thought to bring it home to where this is going, which, stay tuned to forthcoming classes. But the point over here is, how are we capable to do something that's just not of my ilk? How am I capable of, befriending someone who's just not of my cup of tea, as the old saying goes? You know what a chassid is? Can relate to everybody. Can talk to everybody on their level. Can be there for somebody Who's dissimilar to them? That's a real chassid. So, same idea. I mean, this is the idea over here. And again, we're going with this in a particular path, but the takeaway that I'm giving, at least, is to ask ourselves, are we able to relate to everybody? Are we able to contract ourselves and make space? I'm infinitely unbelievable. And this guy's finitely, whatever. Do I make space? Is there space? Or not? And I don't mean there's space just to what's the word, no. I'm losing the word. Space tolerates. I don't mean to tolerate another person. That's what God is doing when He's making the most dissimilar thing there is to Him, the infinite. He's making us finite through contraction. That's the most dissimilar thing that there could be. He's tolerating us. That's what He's doing. So I don't mean that we tolerate another who's dissimilar to us. Right? And actually, this is probably, the answer to of all of the ills of that people can't get along with each other because they're dissimilar one to another. Right? Not the same color, not the same religion, not the same, whatever, right? And you barely tolerate. And for the most part, people don't even tolerate. Think about it. So the takeaway over here is God is making something dissimilar to Him. He's not merely tolerating it, but this is what He wants. So when there's somebody who's dissimilar to you, don't merely tolerate that person, but connect to that person as God's connecting. Connect to that person where they're coming from. Of course, try to give them something more so they can have more light and vitality in their lives. But not because you are nullifying them away because you're infinitely greater and therefore in your light they're nothing. No. God doesn't do that. He's contracting upon His infinite light in order to make something dissimilar. A finite being like me, who He embraces, like you, who He embraces. So we need to do the same. All right, folks. I'm mentioning again because, boy, only because I really believe in it. Tanya Rabbi community. And, to try for a month won't break the bank, I hope. And if it does, then please talk to me. But it will create the conversation that we are not capable of having over here, or the limitations here at least, and will create a conversation that will be very enlightening and not just inspiring, but where you can really own the teachings and they become really a part of you. So I invite you again to go to tanyarabbi.org and I invite you. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Klein coming to you from Chabad Today's Chapter. It's a privilege, a pleasure to share with you Tanya. Rabbi Mendy is going to be I'm going to go onto Zoom in a moment. Rabbi Mendy will be on to learn Talmud. A reminder that we have 7:05 every morning, Monday through Friday. Sundays is 8:05, an hour later. 7:05 we have Hasidic teachings. We're learning an amazing Hasidic discourse about Lag BaOmer from 7:05 to 7:30. Learning. And then we have at 8:30 or between 8:30 and 8:40 we have learning the daily portion of Chumash, of the Torah portion with Rashi. And then of course we have now. And then at 1 o'clock we're going to have Rambam, which we're going to be finishing a whole year's work, a whole 14 books of the Mishnah Torah, the entirety, finishing this coming Wednesday. All right, folks. So please join for whatever you can. Have a wonderful day. God bless you all.